Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the First 15 Coach Cast. Been a minute since I've done one of these, but today I've decided that I've got a little bit of time on my hands and that I would like to yap into your ear a little bit. So thank you for joining me. So I had a previous episode I did on this about strength coaches and trainers and the overuse of data. Well, I'm going to go with a similar theme, except as you can probably guess, I'm going to go towards sport coaches. I have my high school season that I'm about to coach coming up, so that's got my brain turning over in that manner. And of course, I'm seeing other people and other some athletes online just posting their test scores, quote unquote, and what uh, what people are doing for preseason and stuff like that. So it's top of mind for me. So I do want to touch on it just a little bit because, as you can probably guess, I have an opinion on it. Shocker of the day, I know. So when it comes to high school sports, and as I mentioned before, strength coaches over you and trainers are a little over reliant on data. It's tenfold for sport coaches, especially high school sports, and to me, it's a little absurd. It's almost ridiculous. It's borderline ridiculous. And really what I'm thinking of is I don't need to know a max bench, a max squat, a max deadlifts, or anything in the gym. I don't need to know how good you are on a certain fitness test at the high school level. It's not my concern, especially where unless you're in an environment where uh, in a sport where there's a lot of there's a lot of athletes that are coming to you that have played that sport before. Now there's obviously a pretty good list of sports that kids might likely have played before they get to high school and to these high school teams. However, it doesn't exclude them. They should still this point that I'm about to make doesn't exclude them. The time spent on and there's 2 points to this. The time spent on things like fitness tests are so much better spent on uh, building up relationships, skill building, and making sure that people know what your intentions are with the season. I guess maybe that last one's kind of a little ambiguous, but that's certainly what I do. The other part of the whole thing is testing athletes at this age can just can do a couple things. They can put far too much pressure on them than necessary. They already feel the pressure from high school sports for whatever reason, and that is up to the coach to try and alleviate some of those pressures and let them know that it's just a sport. Relax. So if you can do that well, okay, maybe you have some wiggle room to go out there and do a fitness test. But also, if you're looking at certainly sports like rugby, where I have athletes that come in and have never seen the sport before, haven't touched a ball before the first day of practice. I would be more interested in making sure they enjoyed their first few days of practice, have some fun, and then maybe do a little bit of um, conditioning at the end of practice, at the beginning of practice, depending on what your ideas are and what your intentions are. Because I don't want to do an all day fitness test or an all practice fitness test or anything of the like, because let's face it, some of these kids are going to feel pretty crap about themselves and they're going to leave the sport after one of those days. And I would certainly be more interested in keeping as many athletes in my team as possible. One, because it does us a good thing down the road, but two, because I want to give them the chance to have some fun. I don't want them to be done after 1 to 2 days of the sport. That's that doesn't do anybody any good. So there's that, and it's so much easier to figure out if your intention is let's figure out if someone's fit. I can tell you if someone's fit by certainly a couple of the conditioning drills I do, and I try to do only conditioning at the beginning of preseason, and just to build up the lungs a little bit, because not every one of the players that are coming to our my team are coming into this having done a lot of off-season work. Some of them have just been a bunch of lazy bones, and that's how it is. So I gotta at least see what we're dealing with for a baseline. So I will do some conditioning, but I can tell you that there's one or two of the conditioning. Sometimes I call it fitness, whatever you wish to term you wish to apply to it. One or two of the fitness drills, exercises, whatever word that I do, and I can tell you within probably 2 to 3 rounds of what we're doing, who's fit and who's not. And I don't need more than that. I don't need a number in front of my face to tell me someone's fit. And I also can tell you what they were last year. If it's a returning player, I can tell you what they were last year and what they were the year before. Some of them were way far back in the pack in some of these drills, and they'll creep forward. You'll see it. It's not, if you're paying attention, it's not hard to see. So that's my other point about the whole thing. Like, you don't need tests to tell you what's going on with these players in terms of their fitness and their strength. You can observe it when you're doing things. Rugby is a contact sport, so strength does matter. But I can see who's getting bounced and who's getting put on their butt very easily, and who's a problem to put down. That doesn't take much more than a few glances uh, during some contact drills to say, "Yep, all right, this player's strong. Let's let's keep that in mind." So I'm certainly not one that sits there and overly analyzes what happens. And for me, I know I think I do a pretty good job of keeping tabs on what some of the returning players are doing in the off season. A lot of them will do off season strength conditioning with me, and if not, then I usually try and look for an update. And if I don't get an update, they're these athletes know they're leaving it to chance on me and what my opinion of them is going to be coming into the season. I do try and wipe the slate clean, but let's be honest, I'm human. If I haven't seen the person all off season and I don't know what they've been up to, I have to just start with a very neutral idea as opposed to someone I've seen working their butt off all off season. That is going to put them on a different level in my head. I'm I'm human, and I don't try and fight it too often. And should an athlete that I didn't see all off season, didn't hear from all season, all off season, prove to me that they actually were up to some good things, awesome, great. That will that'll come out real quick in the first 3 to 5 days of practice, and I have no problem with sitting there nodding my head and saying, all right, he's been doing something or she's been doing something. No issue with that in my brain. And that is just where my head is at with that. So in summary, as a high school coach, you don't need to do off-season testing, and I get it. Some some teams think they're in a professional environment, and there's probably way too much. Uh, it's being taken way too seriously, that whatever program you're at, so be it. I can't do anything about that. That's how it is. Uh, but also, the point of youth sport is for these players to have a bit of fun. These sports are finite for so many of these athletes. They will not see this sport again, or any sport again, after high school. So to me, in the end, the whole point of this needs to be a time that they remember for good things, for fun. Yes, they're going to have to work hard. There's no denying that. That's part of sport. I get that. But there's a level of which we can just put a cap on it and say, all right, the work's being done. I don't need to push you to your absolute limits, because I know that, or I don't need to push you to a limit where I think you might quit, because there are other ways to mentally prepare someone for something like that. That's not what I'm trying to do here as a high school youth coach. It's way too much emphasis on trophies and stuff like that. I think I've talked about that before. I want them to have a positive experience. I want them to enjoy the sport I'm coaching in particular, and I also want them to walk away with a good feeling about, they have a group that they belong to. So I would prefer those things as opposed to worrying about what data point this person represents, and it's always so much more than that. It's what's going on. We see it all the time too in sports. There are players that don't test well in XYZ. The NFL Combine, which I think just happened, is the perfect example of it. Like, it's a test for college athletes going in trying to be professionals, and it doesn't predict that much. Honestly, it doesn't predict anything super well. Uh, some of the fastest people that have ever participated in the NFL Combine have not turned into really good players, and some of the best test takers aren't necessarily the best students or the best, you know, members of society. So we don't need to put so much emphasis on that. We don't need to put so much reliance on that. I've seen my own with my own two eyes players that probably wouldn't have done well in fitness tests or strength tests or whatever, but man, they were tremendous players, and I would never have dreamed of putting them on the bench if unless they did something against team rules or something like that. But and sometimes it's just what's going on between the ears. It's that, you know that top part of the body there that tends to take care of a lot of things, and the I can't tell what's going on up there because of a fitness test or a strength test. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. There's so much more to it. And yes, there are special human beings that can do it all. I just want to see what they got a little bit with both, which I can do without putting them through a super strenuous test of any sort. And I also want them to have fun. So that's really where I'm at when it comes to high school sports and over testing them and trying to gather more data than you really need. Let's just watch, observe, see for yourself, and let them have a good time and let them come away with a positive experience, because there's enough negative experiences out there for these athletes that we need to do a little bit better than that. So that's what I have for you today. Those are my thoughts. I do appreciate everyone that listens to this, and uh, all the feedback I get. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening to this, and I hope you have a great day. Be back soon.